Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Edit Place, and today we're going to be talking about how to add character to your footage, and not the way that we've made a bunch of videos on this channel and plenty others. Talk about LUTs and color grading, color correcting. There's plenty of videos on that. There's plenty more to come. But today I want to talk about the open effects built right into DaVinci Resolve. Some of these are the studio only version, so free version Resolve owners, you can follow along, see what you're missing, see what you have. But these are really cool built-in plugins right into Resolve that can really add a professional look and add character. And I'm going to show you without even using color graded or stylized footage at all. So let's do it. All right, so jumping in here, we have a couple clips of none other than the oh so famous 𝗚𝗏𝗙𝗖𝗞 himself. Yeah, I shot this stuff on my Blackmagic Pocket, I want to say 4K, a couple years ago when I was in Canada pre-COVID. The times. So yeah, I want to show you a handful of built-in tools to DaVinci Resolve. Some of these may be included in the free version. You can check it out and let me know down in the comments below. But I believe a lot of them are probably in the studio version. But these are fantastic ways to add character to what could be semi-boring shots. Now, for these, yes, of course, everyone knows color grading. I've done nothing here but apply a basic utility LUT. But of course, I could spend time in grading and create a cool style. Yes, of course, that's one way to add character, style, and some dynamic looks to the shots. But today we're not talking about LUTs, we're not talking about color grading, we're just talking about the little extra spice that you can play on top. Now, before I dive in to all of the good old little effects that I want to talk about, it is key that you want to use these as if you are literally adding a little spice, a little bit of salt to your ingredients bowl. I'm not really good at cooking analogies, but you don't want to overdo it or else you can ruin the entire thing. Again, you can spend forever on a really nice color correction, color grade, and you can absolutely blow the entire shot with a overdone kind of effect. And so everybody's clips are going to be different, so you can't really just copy and paste the settings that you'll see me use. But there you go. You've been warned. Now let's get into it a little bit. We got two little shots we're going to be dealing with. This guy right here with the barge coming in. 𝗚𝗏𝗙𝗖𝗞 stand there looking all cool in front of the, I don't know the tower name. This is in Toronto. As well as kind of the reverse side where he's on his phone. And then we got a nice little sunset. Let me go ahead, turn on just the utility LUT. Again, there's no really, not even a color correction on this. This is literally just the raw clip with the Gen 5 color science LUT applied to it. But that's all we need for now to show off some of this stuff. So let's use kind of this clip here, especially since it's got the sun. And I'm just going to add a little node that we're going to be adding a bunch of stuff to, and I will be resetting the node. So we're just going to show it one by one. I repeat, I am not adding all of these effects layered together. Some of them probably could be layered together in different nodes, but again, be subtle and make it look professional. So a lot of the time, I really like kind of glowing stuff. And if you've seen my work before, you know that like if I go to one of my shots here, I use a Dream Effects mist filter, which adds this kind of really nice little haze, glow, whatever you want to call it. Basically just blooms the highlights on the shots. Now, I didn't have that when I was shooting here. I had a really basic kind of crappy lens. And so this is just a very boring image right now. So on the right-hand side here, I'm going to go down to Resolve FX Light. And in here, you're going to see a lot of good stuff. Now, honestly, I can recommend playing around with most of these. The only one I'm not a fan of is the lens flare. Of course, there's a time and a place for everything. But the reason that I'm not a huge fan of this is because it doesn't interact with the image at all. So you have to keyframe and manually do everything here. So if I were to place this like on top of the sun right there, sure, that may look cool, but it's not tracked. So I could easily keyframe this and whatever, but I'm going for stuff that interacts with the image a little bit better. So you can play around with that if you so choose, but that's the only one that I don't use all the time. So aperture diffraction, I love this thing. You can see what it did right there. If I turn this layer on and off, literally just kind of blooms your highlight points. And what's nice about it is it only touches the kind of more hotter spots of the highlight areas in the image. So you can see that it's not really doing anything to the image. And over here, we got some hot spots. If I turn it off, you can see those are the warm parts. And it can get a little funky. You can see like right there, it looks normal, but like as soon as it goes there, please don't leave this in your shot. This is where you can mess around with all the different settings. I recommend turning down the aperture size. If you think about aperture, when you open up the aperture wide open, you're going to get really kind of circle or oval on anamorphic bokeh. And if you're stopped down to like f22, then you're going to get more of the star effect. And so that's what this is kind of doing here. So I usually open it up until it's a nice kind of ball. And then you kind of just mess around with the strength. I'm a big fan of also getting rid of this ugly red color here. You can colorize, go to 100%, and then it will default to white. And then you can change it to other colors if you wanted to tint it. You can get like some Blade Runner neon effect going. Normally I just do white though, because that's going to, and that's not even like perfect white. There we go. And that's just going to make it a lot more subtle and not so much in your face. Again, you can change the strength of it. If this was like a night scene and that was a light, like a street light, I think stronger may look cooler. But for now, I just want to be oh so subtle there. And again, when I go here, it's nice and subtle. And yeah, if I turn this on and off, you can see the effect. Just a little bit of character. Just adds a little bit of atmosphere. Again, you may not like it. All the effects we're talking about today are pretty much fully subjective. So there's that. Now you have glow, which is somewhat similar. However, this is going to more or less affect more of your image. It's still going to primarily attack the highlights first. So down here at the shadows, it's not doing a whole lot. And then if we go here, it's like overexposed. So be careful with this one if you have like the sun or a direct light source in the shot, because if you say go to the beginning and you're like, ooh, I want this to glow and be kind of dreamy. So like, oh, that's looking really nice. Let me spread it out. Let me put it right around there. As soon as we go up to here, we've pretty much just exploded the highlights. And for a dream sequence, maybe this works and this is what you're going for. But I'm not a fan of blowing the highlights. So yeah, just be careful with that one. This one would probably work better on this clip right here. If I turn on glow, again, we get some nice little atmospheric glow. And look, again, I didn't color correct, color grade or anything. And we go from that to that. Kind of just, it's just subtle. You can see a little bit of haze around him. It's just, I don't know. I like it a lot. I'm a fan. Let's move on here. Lens reflections. This was another nice one. I believe I tested it out on this clip. It looked nice. Reset. Lens reflections. This is almost like the lens flare, but again, it interacts with the image. So it's not just static on there. So you don't see it. And then as soon as you get a light source where something wouldn't naturally flare, and obviously this is like really in your face, right? But you have so many parameters to mess with. Again, if you don't want it to be kind of crazy colored, you can go in and just turn it white. You can change the colorize. It's going to somewhat get the color temperature of the image correct. You can change the anamorphic, kind of a little bit trick it to look like anamorphic, lens flare, kind of that straight across. Blur it more, make it more subtle, make it sharper, but it's really nice. Add some character, and sometimes, again, it can be a little too strong. That's a little bit kind of in your face, but especially if you cut this clip shorter, before, which I probably would because it just kind of falls off and becomes a clip of nothing. But kind of like right here, it's a nice little movement. Boom. All right, what do we got next? We got light rays. This one is very stylistic. You can see it's like freaking the heavens are opening up or something. But again, play around with the parameters, see what works for you. This one, again, be careful with a direct light source. If we go back to something like this, maybe it would be a little bit better. Yeah. This one I've used quite a bit before. It's a little, yeah. I think if you're seeing this and you're inspired to do a certain scene or like, oh, that effect is perfect, it's got to like fit the narrative of that scene. This is not one that I would just recommend doing for any specific reason. I do like changing it to different angles so you can have it. It's hard to look at it. It just doesn't fit either of these clips very well, but it's there and it's cool. So moving on, we're going to scroll around here to some of my other favorites. Tilt shift blur. This one's fun. Good old tilt shift. If you have a tilt shift lens, you know how cool they can be. Here you can change the blur strength. If you don't know what tilt shift does, basically like it's kind of complicated. There's tilt shift lenses, which are really complex, but usually when you have a tilt shift blur effect just in software, essentially it's just adding a blur on top and on bottom. And sometimes it can make things look kind of crazy with perspective and size. So again, this is really cool for like dream sequences, or if someone is disoriented, you can do really strong, or if you're just trying to, again, add a touch of character. And then the last little section that I want to talk about here is Resolve FX Texture. There's some really cool ones here, because let's say you're trying to do make footage look like it's old camcorder footage. This is the place you want to go, or old-timey film footage. There are some cheap plugins out there that look really bad. This stuff looks really freaking good. If I apply this to either of these clips, it just, I mean, again, there's parameters you can adjust, but especially if you want to crop in to get rid of the border, if you don't care for that, like this looks so good in my opinion. As someone who shot on tape at the beginning of his early career when I was a kid, like this looks like pretty freaking solid footage. And there are so many parameters that you can go in and mess with the signal noise. So if you want it to be looking older and more rundown than this, or a little bit cleaner, you can scale it back or go forward. It's pretty intense. So again, you can, yeah, I mean, you could just go crazy with the jittering, make it look all broken footage or something. Yeah, pretty cool. And also, don't forget, on all these effects, you'll probably see global blend on pretty much everything. And this is basically like one big opacity driver. So it's kind of funky if you don't go 100% on this effect. But it's a nice way to, if you don't want to mess with blending individual elements, you just want to blend the entire effect in general. Maybe even keyframe it. That could look cool. So like at the start of the clip, it's all modern, but then it goes back to old. Mess around with the global blend. And next up, we have film damage. This one by default looks like one of those cheap sepia tone effects here. But the only reason I want to point this one out is, unlike a lot of basic programs that have something like this, the advantage in Resolve is that you're going to have all the parameters. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this one because it's, again, pretty... You're let's be honest, you're probably not going to use this unless it's like some cool, like trippy transition thing. But something like, I hate sepia tone. So the fact that I can just go in, change the temperature shift back to kind of the cooler normal tones that I had it on. But then you can still get film damage. You can add more scratches. You can disable scratches if you don't like them. You can change the dirt color. You can just really customize it to be a lot or a little. So now it's just more like film footage with a slight vignette, couple little bit of dust particles. But, you know, we did away with the big, ugly, obvious kind of film line that was on it. Alrighty, and last but certainly not least is film grain. Now, film grain is something that is very hard to replicate, and I've tried my fair share of film grain plugins, and I gotta say that the one built into Resolve Studio, and this one I'm pretty like 98% sure is only in the studio version because it is so good. And due to especially YouTube compression, you're probably not going to see any difference. I barely see a difference right there. If I go to grain only, this is a really nice overlay so you can actually see the type of grain what you're doing. So if I want to make the grain a lot bigger, again, I'm going to exaggerate it because I have a feeling that you won't see a lot of the overlay here. So if I turn this back off, obviously you're probably going to see that. This is all a very bit intense here. But if I play this back, hopefully you guys can see it. Again, this is still very, very strong, but according to a lot of people who have worked on film and analyzed film footage, the grain inside Resolve Studio is really good. So not to this strength. So dialed back a lot. Whoops, not that. Basically, I'm just going to do a big old reset here. Just really subtly, you can find a preset that you kind of like, or mess with these parameters and create a preset out of it. And then seriously use that on nearly all your footage, as long as, especially if it's like your YouTube channel, that way it's a consistent look. And adding some grain can look very nice. People get confused between grain and noise looks bad, right? Like no one wants to see, if I take this like B-roll shot here and just like, obvious, that's just bonkers. Like this is noise. This is gross. What is on here, and if I make it a bit stronger here, again, I'm over exaggerating it because I think it's going to be under exaggerated after YouTube compression. So if this looks like trash, then just know I'm overdoing it on purpose. But even though this is way overdone, this is like a nice, it's quality grain. Let's just end it at that. And there you guys have it. Hopefully you got something out of today's video. If you did, definitely hit that like button and subscribe for more content to come. Trying to get up to at least around 3 times a week here. So definitely ramping up the videos for this channel. Huge thanks to everyone who's gotten it to this point. Again, you can follow again, if you're into filmmaking beyond just editing and especially the latest technology, you should go subscribe to my main channel. Of course, all this stuff is down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.